Welcome to the Bo and Luke Show, a podcast designed to inspire you to be better, know better, and do better. You can connect with Bo and Luke on social media at The Bo and Luke Show, or send us an email at fanfeedback@theboandlukeshow.com. Brought to you by Sound United. Without further ado, let's get after it.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bo and Luke Show. We have a very special treat today. We have Joyce Russell on the show. Joyce, if you're not familiar, Joyce is a 30-year veteran with the Adecco Group and led the largest business unit of the Adecco Group North America. Today, she's president of the Adecco Group's U.S. Foundation, whose mission is to make the future of work for everyone. Joyce is a panelist and participant at the World Economic Forum and Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summits. She is one of the board of directors of the American Staffing Association and Dress for Success International. Joyce is a recipient of the Committee of 200's Luminary Award for Corporate Innovation and is a former board member of C200. She's a founding member of Paradigm for Parity, and she is also a member of the International Women's Forum and Women Corporate Directors. And all weekend, Bo and I have spent reading Put a Cherry on Top, Generosity in Life and Leadership, written by Joyce Russell with Sarah Davis. And Bo, I can't say enough good things about this book. It kind of just makes you want to start the week, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It actually made me do work yesterday on Sunday because I'm just reading through. I'm reading through and I'm highlighting. I've got my business cards as bookmarks all throughout the book. And most of it, probably all of it resonated with me, Luke, because Joyce is talking about all the types of things that we talk about in her own words and her own stories. So you just start pulling those nuggets out and how relevant it is to even my background, 26 years in the Army, to what she's been doing 30 plus years in the corporate world with the Adecco Group. Just fascinating things. And what I really pulled out of it, and we've talked about this with other guests too, sometimes it's just the most simple phrases, concepts, but if you get those right, man, do they lead to such powerful results. Joyce, welcome to the Bo and Luke Show. How are you?
Listen, I'm so excited to be on the Bo and Luke Show today. I've been waiting for this all morning long, but hopefully I can put a cherry on top for you and maybe some of your listeners today. And I love that concept of doing things, but doing them just a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
And put that cherry on top.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing I read when I'm like, oh, Joyce and I have something in common, or her parents and I have something in common. I have daughters, and when they were younger, I hosted Young Life events at my house and did the fundraising and had all the kids. What just a fantastic opportunity or fantastic experience. So I wanted to get that out there before we jumped further into the show. How spectacular.
My parents were on National Committee for Young Life, and that's how I met my wonderful husband, David.
Yeah.
That sure was a cherry on top, meeting him and marrying him. And I talk about what an important decision that was for me and how that changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a great way to start out the book. It was super. So Joyce, tell us a little bit tell our listeners about yourself in your words.
Well, I am a daughter of a farmer, right? And my dad spent a lot of time putting fertilizer on plants, and now I get to put fertilizer on people. And so one of the things in the book, and the reason that Sarah and I really wrote the book, was how do we take this knowledge that we'd had from childhood or maybe working in the Adecco Group or business to really putting the fertilizer on more people. So, of course, we wrote the book and launched in March, and probably March wasn't the best time to launch a book in 2020, but actually it was, because, so many people need this message around generosity and kindness right now. And if every day, even in these difficult times, we can think about in every interaction, making it just a little bit better for somebody. And so it really was a great time. So I'm a silver lining author, which is super exciting to talk about in 2020. Maybe this would be a silver lining for someone to read the book and get some nuggets out of it. So anyway, I'm a fertilizer of people.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great phrase. Luke, what do you think about that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And especially from reading this book. Now, Joyce, I feel like this book just sometimes you read a book and you think that people just had a good time writing it. Did this book just kind of write itself for you?
It's 30 years in the making. So what happened was we were living and these stories were coming, and Adecco was growing from 300 million to over 20 billion, and things were happening. So we kept writing them down and putting them in a file. And finally, when I began to run the Adecco Youth Group Foundation, other than the second largest business unit in all of Adecco Group worldwide, it gave us the space and the time to get it out of the file and into a book. And the book would have never happened without my partner, Sarah Davis, who we worked together over 33 years. So she helped me get it all together. And then all those stories that came from childhood all the way up to right now got in a book, and we got it published and out there. And I'm really proud of it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's great.
Yeah, there's such good lessons. Like, no matter where you are in business, like I wish I had this when I first started off cold calling people for Career Builder like a decade ago.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories in there is the tomato bucket story. So when I was a little girl, my dad would say to the three girls, "Do any of you want the fields?" Because they finished, picking and for the year. And so there was this little stand, in our little community, like organic food was sold, et cetera. And so I said, I want to pick the tomatoes. I want to sell them on a Saturday. So what would happen is there'd be a card table, right?
Uh-huh.
A box for my money, and about 25 buckets of tomatoes out in front of me. Well, pretty soon somebody would come up and begin to select beautiful tomatoes out of that bucket. And the next thing I knew, there was another person over the bucket and another person. So 3 people were over the same bucket. Now there are 24 other buckets of tomatoes out there. But this little girl behind the card table saw that, gosh, somebody thinks the best tomatoes are in that bucket. So when I moved to Charlotte in 1987, the concept was, where are the best places to work? I need to get them in my bucket.
Mm-hmm.
If I get them in my bucket, other companies within the community will think that they're missing something and they'll want to do more business with us. So I use that same concept of the tomato bucket story to get the very best clients in our bucket with Adecco. Thus, the others came.
Wow.
You make it sound so simple.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into all of that. And for everyone listening, Joyce talks in her book about behavioral interviewing. And so what I just heard Joyce say, going back to, tomatoes in the bucket, and as a child and selling them out at the street and have all these buckets, makes up a lot of who she is. Right. So when we're thinking about top talent, and Joyce talks about that in her book as well, it kind of goes all the way back to the types of things people were doing when they were kids. So that stuff is important. Joyce, tell us a little bit how you feel about behavioral interviews, because there's some great stuff in your book. Easy to read, easy to say, wow, now I get it, right? Joyce broke it down. You broke it down in a very easy, simple way for people to understand what you're talking about when you say behavioral interviewing. I would love for you to share some of your thoughts on that.
So, Bo, past performance is a pretty good predictor of what's going to happen in the future. And I talk about that in the chapter around interviewing. I believe that one of the most important things we do when we're a leader is really acquire the team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So really, I always say hire slow, fire fast.
Right.
I also say in the book, A's hire A's, B's hire C's, and C's hire losers. So you're really good and an A at this. Yeah. But 2 of my favorite interview questions, I think I share them in the book, are give me a success story before the age of 18.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, did it start early? Did you play that violin? Were you, a part of that spelling bee? Whatever it was, did you have that stick-to-itness?
Mm-hmm.
That stick to it in hard times? The other question is actually a hard question to even understand. And I see their listening skills on this one.
Mm-hmm.
When have you last stepped out of your own lifestyle wishes and preferences to accommodate the wishes and preferences of someone else? What I'm asking in that question is, have you been inconvenienced?
Yeah.
Because you know what? You get inconvenienced a lot in our industry. It's Friday afternoon, it's 4:30, the branch is going to close at 5, and you get an order for 25 people. I want that person in my branch to say, yes. so excited, not be unhappy, right?
Yeah.
That amazing order came in.
Right.
So I'm asking some of those questions. So I love storytelling. And I like in that behavioral interviewing for them to tell me stories, paint a picture.
Right.
And so that's what I talk a lot about in that chapter.
That is so fantastic. Luke, Joyce is talking, man, she's talking my language, because when I do speaking and I'm teaching courses, I talk a lot about values-based leadership, but what that actually means to pull out behaviors. And when you are thinking about interviewing people, you can't take, in my opinion, you can't just take this book someone's published and said, here's all your magic interview questions, right? You have to tailor that to your organization. And what are you looking, if you want to find the best fit, the right fit for your company, right? It's those types of questions to elicit the answers. And then you're searching for in those answers, are they talking about things that fit our company? Are they going to be a fit for our team? Do they align with our culture or not? It's the intangibles that you're pulling out. And I just love it. I think it's awesome.
Well, and Bo, I think we can teach people a lot of technical skills.
Yeah.
It's that fit to the culture, right? That we really want to make sure. And that can make somebody really happy when they fit or really unhappy. So you want to make sure it's almost like dating, that it's almost like a really good marriage in that company.
Yeah. Luke, what say you?
So my first follow-up question from that would be for interviewing. Now I know in dating, I think we compromise way too much, right? So, well, maybe some people don't. They aren't divulging too much, right? I think in dating, we compromise a lot, right? We put on our best face, like just like an interview when we go on the first date. Then we find out, oh, well, this person only does dishes once every 2 weeks or something like that, right? How do you unwaveringly not compromise in interviewing? Because what I've seen with so many leaders in the past is people think they can be good interviewers. They even have questions lined out, right? Then they get into the interview. All of this goes out the window. And then what they do is they end up picking the person that's most like them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband is a really good interviewer. He spent years in the pharmaceutical industry. And the first thing he told me, Luke, was don't fall in love with the candidate. I want you to immediately not decide that this is the person that you want just because on paper or they might be more like you. I use the WHO methodology for all my hires. And so it's very, very specific on the role, which is what Bo was saying, and not just the company or high level. So I use the WHO methodology. It's a great book that was written, and I really focused on that, structured it. So, and I really spend a lot of time before I interview you. So when you come in that you're the most important person for that hour or 90 minutes. Nothing is more important than you. And I think so many people in the interview have not done their homework before they get into that meeting. And so I think I talk about it in another chapter in the book about voting with your time. Yep. I have my cell phone. I'm completely focused on you. I've looked at your LinkedIn profile. I've actually backdoor referenced you with other people within the industry. So you don't want to come in my office or be on my Zoom call, unless you understand that I've spent a lot of time before I got in front of you today.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
How do you, this is kind of branching off into another topic. How do you remain really defensive about your time? And for listeners out there, if you don't know about Joyce, or if you're not familiar with Adecco, Joyce is legit. And Adecco is one of the largest companies on the planet. And she's worked her way pretty much up to the top here. And I imagine you can't do that without being not only super defensive about your time, but I already get the flavor just from looking at you now that when you're doing something, you're all in it, which you just kind of mentioned. You're giving them your 100% attention. I guess my question in all of that is, how do you maintain that and then keep doing it day in and day out? Because I think it's one thing to do it for an afternoon. It's a whole nother thing to do it for a career or a lifespan.
Well, I have to thank my oldest child, Bryson Russell, for that. My second child's Coleman. But what happened was I got home one day and I was multi-processing, which you actually can't do, but I was trying to do that. And I was looking at my BlackBerry at that time and I was telling him something. And I said, Bryson, you need to look at me when I'm talking to you. And he looked right at at me. He said, Mom, you never look at us. Literally broke my heart that I was not focused on the most important things in my life, which were my family. And I was doing too many things at one time. And I stopped right then. I said, you know what? This little 10-year-old just whipped me up one side. You know what I mean? And so I believe in being present. I believe that Bo and Luke and our audience right now are the most important things. And I have a very busy day. But for the hour that we'll spend together, or the time we'll spend together, you deserve my presence. I tell you, you're important because I'm all in right now and listening to you. So I'm very organized. You know, my day starts early and I've got a list and I'm organized and I work through the day. But I also have to say no to a lot of things. And I call that in the book, the big rocks and then the sand. And wonderful story in there, you know, trying to get the rocks in the jar and the sand in the jar. And if you put the sand in the jar first, the rocks will never fit. So I always try to put the big rocks in the jar and then sprinkle the sand all day long. But the rocks are my organized top, you know, big rocks in the jar of whatever need to be accomplished that day. And I think people are more comfortable with sand. So they let it come in, which is an email or a phone call or whatever. But it's kind of like when your parents used to say, you can't have dessert to eat your peas and carrots on your plate. So I the big rocks like peas and carrots on the plate.
Yeah.
Have, you know, some dessert later. Yeah.
That is great. And I think even for individuals that are experienced, you know, 10, 20, 30 years, they need I need it. And I take it even from reading the book. It's those reminders that the big rocks, like you put in here, put first things first, which actually came from Stephen Covey, right?
Yes.
Put first things first, but then you give examples of things that are urgent, things that are not urgent. And if you can just learn on a daily basis to practice your priorities and what's urgent, what's not urgent, the big rocks, it makes a world of difference.
It really does. And I tell a story in the book that really was heartwarming to me about, you know, voting with your time. And so when Coleman was a senior at Providence Day, he was one of the top lacrosse players in the state. And David and I had always been at a game. Either David was there or I was there. And so, but when his senior year, he had these games and he said, I really want both my parents in the stands. And so I said to my assistant, I've got to be there at Providence Day at 4:30 on Thursdays. Now, you all, that wasn't so easy with hundreds of branches and lots to do every single week. And, you know, travel is not always dependable. So to be on the field at 4:30 on Thursday, you had to land by 2:30 because stuff can happen. So as luck would have it, a tsunami happened in Asia, like you would have planned a tsunami his senior year. And so a client really needed me to be somewhere else and not be at Providence Day at 4:30. And I talk about a little methodology that Susie Welch gave me, and it's how will this affect you in 10 minutes? How will this affect you in 10 months? And how will this affect you in 10 years?
Yeah.
If I had not chosen to be on the field at Providence Day, in 10 minutes, a 17-year-old would have snapped at me and said, that's okay, Mom, you always chose your company. In 10 months, I felt like a 17-year-old might be driving a car fast or trying a beverage he shouldn't be trying. And he'd say, well, you didn't do what you said you're going to do, so I didn't do what I said I was going to do.
Wow.
In 10 years, which is right about now, I felt like I might be at that rehearsal dinner and he'd look across the room with his future wife and say, you know what, we're going to get to choose because you got to choose, Mom. So in that story, I was not at our largest customer that day. I sent a direct report who did a much better job than me, which told the customer, it's not all about Joyce. She has an amazing leadership team behind her. It also told my direct report that I trusted her to go on that appointment. So it was a win-win all around. The customer was happy, my colleague was happy, my child was happy. And today I have an amazing relationship with Coleman that he knows that I chose him, risking our largest client in the company.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's super powerful. So everyone listening, you know, you may want to hit the pause button, rewind a little bit and listen to that again, because everything that Joyce just said, I'm sure you can apply that to multiple aspects of your life. And that's a really good 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years, little decision-making tool that you can use with you, forever.
Oh, Joyce, what do you say to people that are struggling with giving up that amount of control? Right. And I also want to, listeners, this is so counterintuitive to think of, because you see all these executives that we have on the show, and we look at Joyce right here. None of these executives are working at becoming the best multitaskers in the world, right? None of them. All of you are focusing really well. Yet you, in this example, you gained control by giving up a lot of control. You kind of, I guess as a sports analogy, became the quarterback and just trusted the rest of your team to make some plays. And then you regained control of an awesome portion of your life. What advice do you give to people that are really struggling and giving up that control? Because I see it every day that they want to be the person to make that call, to go and be there with the client, even if they're not doing the best job at it.
Yeah, I think you have to take risk, as a leader, and I did, but I think it goes back to making those right hires, right?
Yep.
Giving them the right training and being there. I always say one of the best leaders I worked for was a general in the United States Army. And I was a tomboy growing up. I'm so girl now, but a tomboy. And I love to climb trees. And when you climb trees, you fall out of them. And when you fall out of a tree, it knocks the breath out of you. And when it knocks the breath out of you for just a few minutes, you think you're going to die. That must be how it feels. And so what I loved about a general in the United States Army that I worked for at Adecco, is our CEO, Ray Rowe, is he said, climb, 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 go out on the branches. If you fall, I'm just going to tell you to get back up and climb. So as a leader and the team that I led at Adecco, I said, we're going to climb high, we're going to take risks, but I got you at the trunk. Every day I got you at the trunk of your body. So I need you to climb and take those risks. So I think it's that trust and empowerment. Also being there if they fall, get them right back up on that tree.
Yeah. Wow. I love that, General, already, because that's powerful. Yeah. It's super, super good. I had an Army leader that I worked with at the White House that he made a statement to me one day, and he was one of the best leaders I had ever known or had the privilege of being a colleague of. And he ran our Camp David detachment. And he's like, you know what? You can't multitask. He's like, multitasking is a myth, right? He's telling me, I sit down, I do one thing at a time. I set my priorities, and that's, one priority at a time. That's what I work on. So it really resonated with me. It stuck with me even to this day. And that was something that was said to me 15 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I use that on a daily basis. If I'm sitting down, like you said, for this show or whatever it is, then that's the task. That's what I'm doing in that moment. And I end up doing them better.
But I actually learned it's impossible. You can't do it. You're actually, you're juggling your mind back and forth. So you're fully focused instead of fully focused.
Yeah.
And I found that with husbands and children and colleagues, and it's just better to be all in and 100% present. They know when you're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not fooling them. So.
Yeah, I have a story. Sorry, Luke, to jump in here. When I was at Warrant Officer Candidate School, and I think they taught this actual philosophy or this lesson, and then they tested you on it. And they would give us as students 100 tasks to complete, knowing there's no way you can complete not even a third of them in a day. And you're doing this as a group and as a class and so forth. So you quickly had to understand and figure out what are the priorities that they're wanting us to really take on, work on those priorities one at a time. Yeah, they're going to, of course, this is the Army, so they're going to hammer you the next day for everything you didn't finish. But in the end, what they were teaching you was that exact lesson, is that you have to focus and you have to set your priorities. Hated it in the time because it's one of those arduous training events, but it worked. It worked really, really, really well. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But Joyce, what I love about this book is, and listeners, you got to pick it up. It's separated into different lessons. So it's not one of those books where it's just like story after story. It's not going to be like a life commitment to read this book, right? You're going to be able to read it and immediately make your day better. You could pick it up, read one chapter, and probably be better at your craft that day.
Yeah.
One of the lessons that I love is go to the fire. I feel like people really take the important things in business and in their life. And I don't want to say that they hide from it. They just don't really try to address it and hope for the best. Tell me about going to the fire. And then let's just chat on this for a bit, because I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so I have a good story around that. One of our really big customers changed the chief procurement officer out. And the chief procurement officer was coming from a client company that we didn't have, that one of our main competitors had. So you know what I said to that? Danger, 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 right?
Yeah.
So I immediately, what I call go to the fire, meaning get an appointment with her right away. Instead of being fearful to meet with her, I've got to go and talk about our 20-year relationship and how we got there, and then what we do every single year to make them more successful. Not Adecco more successful, them more successful. So I go and I meet with her, and she's just like a chief procurement officer, very buttoned up, very serious about supply chain, et cetera. So then we had the first meeting, and then she said, come back, come back, come back. And pretty much we developed this amazing relationship. We kept the customer. They added more business, and I'm talking about millions of dollars worth of business. We still have them today. What she told me years later is our competitor never made a call on her. She had a client company where they were the biggest customer of that competitor, never even came to meet with her here in Charlotte. So by me going to the fire, not being scared, which I was scared, you all, I'm just going to be honest with you, afraid to lose the business with her long-term relationship with our competitor. So I always remind myself of being brave, right? And the fire, whether it might be a colleague conversation, which makes me feel really uncomfortable that we're going to have a difficult conversation, or maybe even a client or a prospect. I just need to get braver and go. And so I always think about that. But I want everyone to know I had the same feeling as you. It wasn't so easy. And I had to, muster up the courage. And I love personal courage. It's one of my favorite leadership traits is personal courage. And I love generosity. So that's probably the best story around going to the fire.
That's awesome. And where'd you get that lesson? Because it's rare today that people do it. And it kind of goes against, it's uncomfortable for people to do so, Yeah,
I think it's just, when you have this time, you see these movies played over and over, and that bore out a much better, outcome. And so I've just had to say to little old me, you're going to have to stir up that courage and work that muscle, right? It's a muscle we work, personal courage. And so I just have to work the muscle just like I might work out. And so I work on being better, and still today I have a lot to work on. So I'm constantly working on, muscles. Right now I'm working on resilience.
Yeah.
So I have to work on that muscle of being more resilient. I'm not perfect, and I keep on doing that. And then I try to help other people do the same thing.
It's crazy how well it works when you go to the fire, right? Like when I started off in my career in sales, all I wanted was like the good news. I just wanted a deal that had good news and people that liked me and liked my product, and a deal would sail through. Well, doing that, like 1 out of every 10 deals would come in, right? It wasn't a great way to run your business. Now, fast forward, now that I'm older, like I don't want to seem like I'm not a grump when it comes to deals by any means, but I'm constantly just looking for the risk. I'm like, okay, where is this going to fall through? Where's the worst part of this? How does it fall apart? And I look at it, I scrutinize it really badly, and then try to do what you do, go towards that fire and get it done. And it works so well.
So let me give you another example. So net promoter score is really important to us, right? And clearly rated as the company that we've worked with. And so when an associate or a client gives us poor feedback, we call them immediately and say, thank you for the feedback, because that's really what they want, right? Is to be heard. And so if you go to the fire and you call the customer or you call the associate, say, I'm so sorry you had that experience, give me another chance. What human being is not going to give you another chance?
Yeah.
Or at least that they've been heard. So it's just really been really good for my life is to go to the fire.
I'm with you. Throughout your career, how would you get dual question. How would you get meetings with executives? And how do people, now that everything's changing, I mean, look, there's automations out there where people just put you in sequences and you get computers emailing you for meetings all the time. How does somebody stand out to you, and how would you stand out to other people? Because I feel like it's a moving target, and we're kind of getting back into the age where just hyper personalization and being real with people is the way to go. What do you think about that?
So multifaceted, that question. Yep. So one is the power of relationships.
Yep.
Is invaluable. So it's like if I'm trying to meet with someone or something, but I see they have a relationship with Bo and with Luke, who I know, and with Joni and with Mary and all these other people, then we have a commonality, right?
Yep.
I might ask for a referral, right? I'm trying to call Jim, and all these people know Jim, and we have this in common, so I'm going to use that. The other thing is references or on service, right? Mm-hmm. A product, service, and value. So I might use that as well. So really, I talk a lot about in the chapter of the power of relationships. And that has been invaluable for me. I tell a really funny story in the book. So we had a problem getting a payroll tax put through in the state of Kentucky. So I had gone to this conference, the C200 conference, and they said, if you ever have a problem, you just call one of these sisters, because it's a women's group. So I was like, well, I got a problem with the state of Kentucky. So anyway, I looked in the book for somebody from Kentucky, and I saw Phoebe was from Kentucky. So I called Phoebe up and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm Joyce Russell. I'm, president of Adecco staffing here in the US. And I wondered if you could help me with a tax issue in Kentucky. And she said, Sugar. She called me Sugar. She said, Sugar, this is how this is going to go. I'm going to call the governor's office and speak to the governor's team. And then the governor's going to call you, and we're going to get this little situation worked out. Now I'm thinking, right. The governor's office. So I go tell Ansley in my office that what happened, and I said, the governor might call, So sure enough, later about 3:00, Ansley tells me that Governor Beshear is online too. And I'm like, yeah, right. Anyway, I get on the telephone. It's Governor Beshear, and he's apologizing that we've had this problem, but he's talked to his group there, and it really was a miscommunication, which was what was so great. Mm-hmm. And we got that worked out. But here was me using the power relationship from a business organization that I'm a part of, that Phoebe was a part of, that she might have known the governor of Kentucky, and that got resolved, for Adecco. So I strongly believe, even in this really digital world, about the power of relationships.
It's so true. Yeah. So true. Well said. And that's such a great story too. That's in the book, listeners, by the way.
Yeah. Super good story.
I sometimes forget I didn't put everything in the book. So it's all in there.
Yeah. Yeah. 30 plus years doesn't quite fit into 110 pages, but you put some great stuff in there, Joyce, for sure.
No, it'll be in the second book.
Yeah. That's right. Reason to write another book. I loved page 78 and 79, where you talk about lessons on what makes a good employee and how to be a good employee. There's 10 lessons here, but so that I make sure that I ask it, I love this phrase, and I want to know, did that just come to you? Number 10, the first sentence is, know the animal you're tracking. Is that from growing up on the farm? Were you a hunter? How did you come up with that phrase? Because I love it.
I don't even know where that came from, but I always think that, before I'm going to meet a customer or a client or prospect or anybody, I look up and know a lot about them, right? Because I'm sure we have something in common. And so I think and when I meet you, that I spent time to get to know you, even though I haven't met you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love when people meet me, and I had a really cool experience with Adecco, I got to run the torch in the Sydney 2000 Olympics.
Nice.
We were staffing 10,000 associates for those games, and 2 individuals in the U.S. got to go run the torch. And so I was one of those really lucky people in life to go run the torch. And so when people meet me, a lot of times they say, well, oh my God, you ran the torch in the Olympics. And I know that they were tracking me, right? Respecting me to spend enough time know a little bit about me.
Yeah.
So I love that phrase.
I think it's fantastic. And the whole lesson for everybody, you got to buy Joyce's book and you have to pull this stuff out. And the lesson here in number 10 and what you're talking about can be applied to so many things. And one of the things I talk about, Joyce, is leadership. I love talking about leadership. And people will ask me, how do you make the jump from military leadership to corporate leadership? And I said, well, I was taught at a very young age from all of my professional development that you have to really care about the people you're leading, right? And then when I read this, because people will say, well, Bo, how do you do that, right? How do you care? How do you show that you care about people? Well, you just put it right here, right? Know your habits, your likes, your dislikes, your strengths, your weaknesses, what brings them joy, what brings them value. So you're doing that homework on every relationship that you have, to include the people that you're responsible for, right? Yeah, you have multiple examples in the book, even of different types of things that you've done for your team. And when I'm reading that, I'm like, I think a lot of people get this wrong, because they'll say, oh, well, if I have an event for my team, it's the event that was important. And I pull from that, for you to even get to what you did for your team, and I'll let you explain it, the one event where you had families and everybody come, you didn't just do that. You knew these people, and you knew what would help motivate them and inspire them and make this a very special event. It wasn't the fact that you had the event, it's that you cared so much for your team and building that team for your branch, right? That's what I'm pulling out of all of this. So,
and you're talking about, we have something at Adecco called Superstars. I'm going to tell that story. So when we went to New Orleans 2 years ago, I'm trying to think of how can I make this so memorable that you will never experience it again in your life. Mm-hmm. We told everyone we were going to dinner. It was 125 people. We're walking down a street. I think it was Fisherman Street next to Bourbon Street. We're walking to the end, and they think they're going to walk in a restaurant. No. We had a parade ready, a complete parade. They were getting on the floats. They were throwing the things out. So I want them to have an experience that they get to have because of their performance at Adecco, that they're going to do something that they've never gotten to do before. Or when we were in Aspen and the balloons all landed and we got all in the balloons and sailed above Aspen and had a champagne brunch when they landed. Wow. Or just last week, when Rochelle's children, I know we're going to their grandparents for Christmas, and I sent them my favorite game, which is called Dog Bingo. It's either cat bingo or dog bingo, and you're the caller, you get to call all the dogs, and they, so I'm always thinking about little things that put a cherry on top, because for Rochelle, those two children are really important to her. Trying to homeschool right now and do everything. And the other thing, I don't call Rochelle before 9:00 in the morning. I know she's super busy with breakfast and getting the children on Zoom. Mm-hmm. So I say, Rochelle's so important to me, I never call Rochelle before 9, mm-hmm. right? So yeah. You just have to know the animal you're tracking and what's important. And then you do really kind and considerate and thoughtful things, which I call cherry on top for them. It's just so simple.
Yeah. We've had that conversation with so many people on the show that it's just so simple. But I think that's the differentiator between companies that you're running like Adecco and being so successful over time, and ones that struggle or they end up going out of business down the road. I think when you study those companies, you can really point to some of these factors that people like yourself say, these are just so simple, right? These are just the simple things.
Try to treat everyone like I would want to be treated, but even just a little bit better. That right. Cherry on top.
Absolutely.
Every single interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Joyce, it's from speaking to you. I mean, it's to oversimplify it is you care. That's your superpower, is you care about everything.
So Luke, both my children said, Mom, the difference of what we've seen, they're 32 and 30 now, is you care more than others. You care more than others. And I think, Luke, you got it right. I really do.
Mm-hmm. It's apparent. You can tell that when I say, like, listeners, that Joyce cares about everything, it's true. And you can see it from talking to her. You can read about it in her book. Every one of these 10 things about, what makes a good employee and how to be a good employee, you can simplify it right back into caring. You look at number one, knowing that animal that you're tracking. You care about that animal. You're tracking it. What you said about how to get meetings with people and to go through your network and references. That's because you care. You didn't take any easy way out. And I can see how it comes naturally to you and it seems easy to you because when you go into it with that, I guess with that aim and that target, everything else would come easy as long as you care.
Somebody said, be interested in interesting.
Mm.
So, listen, right, to someone else, right? Be interested in them, but also bring some, because maybe something about the person, bring something that's interesting to them. Carla Harris is the vice chairman of Morgan Stanley, and I got to interview her for the ASA conference. She said 4 deposits in before any one withdrawal out. 4 things you're going to do something for somebody before you ask something of them. Because so many people will over ask and they have not contributed to the relationship. So now with Carla, I'm learning from her. And what I want the listeners to know also about me is I'm curious and I'm constantly learning too to be better. Mm-hmm. It's over. My journey's not over of learning, and their journey's your journey's not over for learning. The book will give you some of my life lessons. And one of the things really interesting in here, we were talking at the American Staffing Association recently about a competitor. They won't give the secret sauce in their lessons. I gave all mine. I was all in on the book to give you every secret that you might be more successful personally and professionally. So I gave it all. Hopes that your life would be more abundant than mine.
Amazing. It's the best, develop the rest. I mean, and you have to, if you want that next generation of leaders to that are going to backfill you and all of their positions along the way, that's what you have to do. You absolutely have to do. And
I'm planting trees of whose shade I will not sit under.
Right. And I think, Luke, Joyce, and for everybody listening, she just said something that is really powerful. Joyce, if you think about the position that she's in today, and this is a message to the listeners, and everything that Luke and I stand for and be better, know better, do better, she's the president of a multi-billion-dollar organization. And she just said she's still learning. Continuous learning, continuous education, continuing to improve yourself, and then give it all back to the new leaders coming up behind you is so, so important. It just cannot be overstated, in my opinion.
Yeah. For the listeners, I spent 33 years in the business, and then Adecco gave me this amazing opportunity to put a cherry on top of my Adecco career by running the foundation, which is really our cherry on top and give back in communities. So we're focused on upskilling and reskilling, which is so important right now to help the future work for everyone. Equality and equity, we're all focused on doing a better job there around diversity and inclusion and belonging. And then the third is just giving back in our local communities. I think we forget how we can still make an impact in our local communities. So there's so much work for all of us to do.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
So amazing. So amazing. I love that the growth mindset. We've mentioned it on here a few times, the Tony Robbins quote where he says, if you get where I am, you'll be where I was, because he's never stopping to grow. Right. And that's what's so beautiful about the professional and personal business. It's not like sports is, right? Like you could aim to be the best basketball player of all time. It's going to have a time. It's going to have a timer on it, right? Because of that physical commitment to that. When you get into business and your professional life, there's no timer on that. So cool to think about.
You have to vote for you, Luke, right? Right now in this time, I'm really thinking about self-care of everybody gets the same amount of hours. So, it's difficult. So am I sleeping enough? Am I working out enough? Am I eating the right things? Am I reading the right things in my mind? Be mentally ready. So I'd say to all of you all, you have this just finite amount of time every day, and you got to vote for you. You got to grow you. And so just like reading the book, put a cherry on top nuggets, there are other books and other nuggets, but don't forget to not invest in you. Even if the company might be forgetting you right now, you don't forget you.
Try it.
Read, you learn, you be curious. I am every single day. And so it's great to be, affiliated and have a relationship with Luke and Bo and listen to the show. I won't miss it. I will not miss it. because they're having amazing people on to fertilize all of us. And I'm going to take a nugget from somebody and I'm going to use it. I heard a great nugget recently. It says, difficult times can develop us. Difficult times can diminish us. Difficult times can define us. And ultimately, we get to decide. So we're the decision makers on what we'll do in today's time. And I'm super excited about 2021 because you go to Vegas and you hit 21, you're a winner, right?
That's true.
That's true.
I'm not gambling on 2021. I'm going in with a positive attitude. We will win personally and professionally in 2021. And if you go with that attitude, it's not a gamble. It'll be a great year. And so we got to flip our mentality right now and be super positive on the year that's about to come and hit blackjack.
Amazing.
Everyone around you so lucky to have you in their lives, Joyce. I got to tell you.
I don't know every day, but
That's
awesome, Joyce. I think you just summed it up perfectly. That is fantastic. Great year ahead. We thank you so much for joining us today on our show. I think our listeners are just going to get so much. It's going to be so impactful. I know.
Oh, Luke, I just want to say something to both of you that I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be on the show and to talk about the message that's put a cherry on top, generosity in life and leadership. So thank you for choosing me. And I wish you all the best in 2021, and I'll be listening to every show. Awesome.
Thank you. Luke, any parting thoughts?
It's just an absolute pleasure. We're the ones that are grateful for you, Joyce, for being on here. And, we already held you in very high regard, but from reading your book and having this conversation with you, we just couldn't be more grateful. And I think I know our listeners will get a ton out of it, but personally I have as well. So thank you.
Thank you, both of you, so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
This was great.
It's great.
Put a cherry on top.
And that's a wrap. Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more. Rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsor, Sound United, for quality broadcast audio throughout Season 2.